Hello Internet! Today we're going to be taking another look at our Mindustry server that we built last week. So if you haven't watched that video, we made a really simple or quick Docker container. It's just 3 lines, it looks something like this. And the idea is it creates a containerized or a modular or reproducible version of a Mindustry server, which is an open source public game that you can play. That's sort of a tower defense / factory game. So this gets us a server that we can kind of start and run manually. In this video, we're going to be taking it a little further. We're going to be looking at how we can do custom maps, how we can automatically start a map directly, and how we can download the actual server binary dynamically. So when we build the image, we actually download the correct image automatically without having to download it and then copy it over and do all of that. So we're going to kind of be adding a bunch of components to this to kind of make it a little bit more complicated, explore some volumes and ways to persist storage so saves and things don't get lost when you restart your containers, things like that. This isn't going to cover everything that you can do with this image. That isn't really the point. There's too much to cover. But hopefully it will give you enough of a picture so you can kind of start tinkering and adding more or less or doing what you would like to do in order to kind of make this work for you. There might be, if there's interest, we might do something about Docker Compose, which is typically how I tend to run my servers. That's another way to kind of parameterize your server and make it really easy to kind of move those around between computers or between locations in a pretty modular format. So let's take a look at this. I've already downloaded, I just found a random map. I admittedly am not very familiar with the custom maps, but I just grabbed one off of the internet. So we're going to do that. It's a fast rush map, so things run at us real quick. In order to do this, we actually don't need to change this image at all. So we could build this again and do all the normal stuff. We get our normal image. This is the standard build stuff. There's the command if you're curious. It was just docker build with a tag, and then you build the Dockerfile. Then when we want to run it, this is our command for running it. -it gives us an interactive terminal, so we can actually go and do that. IT doesn't actually stand for interactive terminal. It stands for other things, but that's how I remember it, because that's the actual result that you get from this. It accepts input and gives you a TTY input. So that's how that works. And then we expose both our UDP and TCP ports. Both of those are required from Mindustry. And then we just give it the image name. So if we run this, it will do exactly what it was doing last time. We will get our server. I can do help, and we'll get a list of everything. But if I go and do, I think it's maps, you can see no custom maps are loaded. To display custom maps, use the all, or to display built-in maps, use the all argument, but it does give us a map directory. And so with that, what we can do is we can map this maps directory to this config maps directory. The way we can do this, Docker gives you 2 options. There's volumes and there's mounts. Volumes is typically what I start with. That is not necessarily the recommended way. It's just what I'm familiar with and tend to use. But we will basically redo all of this. And all we have to do, we don't need to rebuild our image because all we're doing is changing the actual configuration of our server. And how we're doing that is we're going to mount our pwd is just getting the current working directory. So where we currently are, get that directory /maps. And then the colon is where we want to map it on our server, which is config/maps, which is that directory that this server just told us its custom maps were located at. So what we're doing is mounting this directory that I have up here in the top right or top left into our actual thing. The cool thing with this mapping is it's 2-way, which means I can still drop new things in here while the server is running, reload maps, and actually see that happen. I'm not going to demo that, but those are things that you can do. So if we run this again, we will get everything restarting and doing all of its normal stuff. And now if I do maps, we see our map, right? So now we have our custom map, which means if I do a host fast rush, we're now using our custom map that I just loaded. So this gives us a way to kind of just drop in a new map, run it, and get going. And so that's sort of, how that works. We can shut this down and everything goes away. And so now we're back to where we were. So that's how to do custom maps. You can do this with volumes to mount a whole bunch of things. What I've been finding is useful is actually mounting the config directory. So as well as mounting this maps, we can do -v. -v is for the volume pwd, and then mount our config, I guess. And we want this to just map to config on the server. So now if I run this, you'll see a config directory gets created for me, and there's a whole bunch of fun things in here. So now I can do like host fast rush, host our server, and then I can do like save test, right? And so now I've created a new save of whatever that server state is, and we can just resume that. And the save is now persisted onto my computer. I have access to this file. If you weren't doing this previously, if you weren't mounting things, there wouldn't actually be a server for you to be able to access. So you wouldn't have a really easy, there are ways to kind of get this file back, but it's very hard if you haven't mounted it somewhere on your actual computer. Containers are kind of designed to be ephemeral. They're intended to go away. And that's not great if you're trying to save data. So databases, game servers that have state, basically anything that has anything you want to save, you are going to want some way to persist that data. The easiest that I've found is just creating a volume mount. The cool thing with this is I can delete all of this and all of my config stays around. That container can go away. I can delete it. I can do whatever I want with it. But if I relaunch a thing and mount the same volume, all of this information is still here. I can still use it in whatever new thing I create, which means if I update or do something else, my save doesn't just go away. It's still there. I can access it. I can modify it. I can do whatever I want. It's just there for me to play with, to access and do things with. So yeah, custom maps, there's our config, there's our persistent storage. The other thing that I kind of want to do is I want to get rid of this. So we have this server.jar that I'm copying over. What I want to do, I'm just going to rename this. The server is not here. Sure. So what I've done is broken our build. This isn't going to work anymore because the server doesn't exist. So what I want to do is basically repeat this, but have things be able to come back. And so the way to do that, I've taken a couple notes just because I would forget these commands. But we can just add on this and give it a, let's say, mindustry version. And then this has server release.jar. And so what this is doing is actually going out to GitHub, and it's going to go and pull down the image. Unlike copy, which copies from your local into the container. So it goes from what's local on your computer onto the container. Add can do local or remote. So in this case, I'm giving it a remote URL to a GitHub repository, and this is specifically a GitHub release. And instead of parameterizing this, let's just do the slightly less confusing one. Let's just type in the version explicitly. So v146 is the current version that I am using right now. And instead, we want to copy this to the exact same place that we were using previously. And so I can just delete that. And now that server file is never going to be used. I no longer need it, and I can still build this. It's going to go out, and you can see it actually goes and grabs from GitHub. It grabs that file, downloads it, puts it in the thing, and now I can just run my server as normal. Like this. Everything starts and boots and does normal things. But when we build the image, importantly, this is done when we build the image, not when you run the image. The only thing that is getting executed when we actually run this image is the CMD. Everything else is baked into the image. So you can see that the download happened during the build, not during the run. That's important. It means like you will still need to rebuild this if you want to say update. That this isn't going to handle auto updating. If you want to do that, there are options to throw like a curl or something inside of the script that I'm going to write next. But this sort of gives you a way to have those files get downloaded automatically. It means you don't need to manage them on your local machine. You can just have it download them, use it, and go from there. So what I'm going to do is declare this as a argument. We're just going to call this the mindustry version. And I'm going to declare a environment variable of the same thing. And so what this is saying grab the argument if it's there. Otherwise, use the default, which is v146. So this is if it's not there, use this. And then we're just checking for this mindustry version. So it gives us an option when we build our image to provide a version. Otherwise, it's going to use v146. Just a fun way to do that. And then we can actually provide this here and go mindustry version there. And so now this is actually parameterized, which means that I can build this like this, build-arg. I should have written this part down because I always forget it. Mindustry version 145 question mark. Is that gonna work? Yeah. So you can see that actually when I provide that, we actually go and pull the v145 release. So this is an older version of the server. If I actually run this, run this server, you can see it starts. We can do host, actually start our map. If I go to play and try to join this, you can see our server is now outdated because I'm using an old version. So we've actually downloaded the wrong version. That's intentional. That's what I wanted to show, but it gives you a way to kind of parameterize that, right? So now I can set this back. It still works. These versions are just based off of the GitHub release names. So I'm just using the tag of the GitHub release. So if you're curious where that's coming from, it's just what is tagged on GitHub. You can also just go on GitHub and browse to this URL and you'll find the same thing. This Dockerfile will be in the description for the video, so you can go and grab it if you want to play around with this yourself. But yeah, that's how that works. The other thing that I want to do is when I start this server, I have to manually host the server. I have to type host and give it a map in order to host it. I don't want to do that. That just doesn't seem as fun to me. And so what I would like to do is give it a start with a script. So instead of providing a Java jar command here from the start, we're actually just going to go and create a start server.sh, and we're going to do some bash. So the idea here is we're going to do if we get let's just start from scratch, right? So Java jar mindustry server.jar. Cool. And so this is doing exactly what our CMD was doing, but now we have a script, which means we can do a whole bunch of things. We can do conditions. We can basically do everything we want to set this up to do dynamic stuff. This is where you would put a curl if you wanted to manually download a specific version every boot. But yeah, so that's how that works. And all we need to do is swap this out. So we're just going to invoke this from a shell and do start. Mindustry/start server.sh. This isn't going to work. It might build, but it won't run. So we do get a successful build, but if I actually try to run this, you can see the file doesn't exist. That's because I haven't copied it over yet. So thinking a little bit about this, I think this should be fine. So the reason I was thinking there is it actually matters. The order that you put things in inside of your Dockerfile. This is actually sensitive. So if we're going to be iterating on this file, every time you, well, actually you can see this. So you can see that we've actually cached parts of our build step. Inside when we do a Docker build, parts of them are going to say these steps are cached. What that's saying is we've already done all of this work and nothing has changed. There's no difference in what you are trying to do. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use the existing copy I have. So by putting this copy below our download, I can change this script as much as I want, and we are not going to re-download a new server version every time we want it. It's going to stay the same because we already have a pre-existing local build with that version. The difference would happen if I took this and moved it above. If I moved this up here, then the server would change, and the image for this would also be different. It would no longer be the same because the start server shell or script had changed. Because that's different, it means we're also re-downloading a server. So in order to kind of make your builds, your Docker builds faster, you can actually order your steps in a way that's kind of nice to make them a little bit faster and easier to build. And in this case, it's a little bit more respectful of like GitHub servers. We're not just pinging them constantly, asking for the file that we've already got. So yeah, there we go. That starts our server. And I want to make sure this is correct. Yeah. So let's build this. You can see it runs. This is cached. This is not. And so then we can actually run this. And we get back to exactly where we were. So the next step is to just put host here. So if I do that, build our server, and put run here, as soon as I run it, the server hosts, because we provided a host command. So if you tell it to host, it's just going to host whatever it is. And so we can actually play around with this to kind of automatically do some fun things. So if we get a argument, let's say, that is a mindustry map. This can be named whatever you want. Then we're going to do some fun stuff. Like this. Is that? Yeah. I always forget how to do bash if else statements. And I feel like I should always remember this, but I just never do. We will quickly talk through what's going on here. Mindustry map. So what this is doing is if there is not, so -z is saying if it's empty or null. So if it's basically an empty string, which would happen if this was never set. So if we've done nothing with this, it's going to be empty. If that's the case, then just host a random map. Otherwise, if we provided a specific map in our arguments, host that map instead. And so let's do maps all. And this way we have a list of some of the other maps that we can choose. So we can quit from that. I'll figure that out later and probably forget. But now we actually have a way to provide arguments. So if I go and build this, that will work. We shouldn't need to build again, because assuming my script actually works. A big if. But we can run this now, and it hosts a random map. We can host like stop. We can host a different map. You do have to stop first. I forgot about that. But this allows us to kind of select specific things. And so now what I can do is go in here and give it a -e mindustry map and say hosted on the Veins server. That's what I just picked. So if I choose this, run this and start it, we should hopefully have a map running on Veins, which we do. And I can just jump into that. We're there. And we're losing. So those are some fun like options for sort of how to kind of customize your server. We've done like persistent config, we've done custom maps. This gives us a little bit of extra flexibility with how we actually want to start this or host this. You can expand this script significantly if you would like to. This is kind of intended as a like starting off point if you would like to just kind of start here. You need to mount extra maps, that's an option for you. And if you would like to see more, let me know. Comments are always appreciated. If you want to see something with Docker Compose as well, let me know. That's probably the next place that I would look for this. We're kind of getting to the point where that makes a little bit more sense than what we're currently doing. So that's probably where I would go next with this, but we can kind of take it wherever. So hopefully this is useful. And if you are able to host your servers with it, I would love to hear about it. So that's it. So until next time, see you, Internet.